Hey, good morning. Scott Luton, Greg White with you here on Supply Chain Now. Welcome to today's live stream. Greg, good morning. How you doing?
I am doing well. Scott, how are you?
Doing good. Solid weekend, productive weekend. The Braves continue to grind it out. And football is back. Football and family.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, in your Chiefs won last week.
Yes.
So looking to
That's
go 2-0
important.
this week, right?
We kicked it all off on Thursday, and there were some really interesting results over the weekend. And then, what is it? The Giants. I knew this last night. Giants play tonight.
Okay.
So,
looking forward to that Monday Night Football.
Yeah.
And, of course, college football is in swing. But today, it's all about the buzz, the supply chain buzz right here, Supply Chain Now, where Greg and I share some of the leading news stories and developments from across global supply chain. But today, in addition, of course, hearing from our audience, who always brings it, always have their A game. But today we've got a special guest that's been in the works for a while. We're big fans. JD Redmon, a fellow entrepreneur, advisor, and industry thought leader, will be joining us here about 12:20. We're excited about that, Greg.
I am. JD brings the truth, as he says. So I'm looking forward to hearing it. I love the truth.
He said what he said is he's going to make sure his truth gun is loaded and ready to go. I like that. Right. But he does always bring it, and really appreciate him joining us here today, as busy as he is. So let's say hello to a few folks before we dive into Jeffrey Miller. We couldn't have a live stream without one Jeff Miller. Of course, Clay Phillips and Amanda Luton behind the scenes, making it happen, engaging the audience. Professor A.A. Mohib from the air capital of the world is here with us, Greg.
Go Shocks.
Hey, Professor, you need to stick around because we're going to touch on Wichita in one of the stories here today.
That's
Sophia.
Right.
Sophia is with us. Sophia is basically an analyst based on her work.
We better be good today.
Absolutely.
She's checking us big time.
And we look forward to sitting down with Sophia later today.
That's right.
Gosh.
That will be good, won't it? For everyone to hear from Sophia. I mean, like actually hear from her. We've seen she can write.
That's right.
See what you got to say.
Waldemar, Hamza, Stefan, Josue, Daria, Davin, Kavan. Man, Chris Jolly is here, Freight Podcast. So great to have you, each of you here. And with no further ado, let's dive right in, Greg.
Let's do it.
All right. So one quick programming note before we get started. We got a little historical tidbit that we're going to lead off with. Is if you enjoy our live stream, hey, be sure to check out our podcast. We publish Monday through Friday, sometimes Saturday, as we look to cover the ever-changing, rapidly changing world of global end-to-end supply chain. All right. So, Greg, did you know? So today we published an episode of This Week in Business History. And while we touched on J.C. Penney, who was born this week forever ago, we touched on Karsten Solheim, founder of Ping, which is an interesting story.
Hero of Phoenix, Arizona, yeah.
There you go. But also on September 19th, 1982, it was the first documented use, which sounds weird, but hey, I don't write the history, of the emoticon. So Scott Fahlman, who at the time was a professor on staff at Carnegie Mellon, proposed that on the electronic messaging board, probably the first generation back in 1982, to make sure folks understood what was a joke and what wasn't, to read these characters sideways. And,
wow.
Who would have
Look
thought?
at the detail of that description, right? If that's not a scientist, I don't know who is.
Oh, absolutely. So
sideways.
So we have emojis and emoticons helping folks find their funny bone since 1982. And if you want to learn more about that or any of these other stories we just mentioned, J.C. Penney, Karsten Solheim, and Ping, check out This Week in Business History, published wherever you get your podcast from. All right. So let's talk about the news of the day. Greg, are you ready?
I am.
Okay.
This is a favorite.
Yes, and I wish I could tell you that I've got a Peloton that I jump on every morning for an hour in the corner of my one corner of our house, but that's still a goal I'm looking to accomplish this year, Greg.
Good on you. Not even wait till you see the price, then you'll think about it again.
All right, so Peloton production has ramped up. The company made a big investment to ramp up, but they're still having supply issues. So last week, Peloton said in an earnings call that order to delivery times won't get back to normal until 2021. Demand, big part of the problem, continues to climb for their bikes, despite the price tag, as you were mentioning. And even though the company doubled production capacity earlier this year, it just can't keep up. In fact, they've even delayed or downsized new product launches so they could focus those resources on getting current product out the door. You know, many companies have done something similar. A new factory in Taiwan comes online in December. That should help them get caught up a little bit. But the other cool thing is about this story, while production continues to get caught up, Peloton has made big progress on their logistics capabilities and operations. In fact, last year in 2019, the company struggled with logistics extensively to the point where they insourced a big chunk of the logistics to figure out the problems. So they have solved those problems so well, Greg, that they are electing to roll out a new reverse logistics operation, which we all know are very complex.
Yeah.
So customers can trade in their old bikes for newer models.
Wow.
So,
okay.
A couple of thoughts from your neck of the woods, Greg, as you hear Peloton struggles and their advances.
Well, one, I'd like to acknowledge their efforts, not only to meet demand when people are much more aware and frankly much more able to manage their health, because a lot of them have cut 2 hours of commuting time out of their day, but also they've diversified their products. It's interesting to say that they have downsized new product launches, but the photo you have here is of a commercial that I just happened to see while watching football, sitting on the couch. And it's a really incredible tool set. You can turn the monitor. They have weight programs, and it's not just about the bike anymore. So it's really a great. They've still been extending their product capability and creating a more complete exercise routine. So it seems like this might not be such a burden to slow down the introduction of new products, because they have a relatively well-rounded workout right now.
Mm-hmm.
But recognizing that is key. We've seen big brands like Coca-Cola and others recognize that simplifying their supply chain is a critical part of creating effectiveness and reducing cost in it. So well done, smart to insource, to gain control of that. Even if they do wind up, as many companies do, wind up outsourcing it again, they will have built a model that they can provide to their 3PL partners to help them be successful in the future.
Yeah, well put. Hey, Jeff Miller says regarding Peloton, equities markets are also asking if demand will still be high in 2021, by which time we will hopefully be back in gyms. Is this an example of capacity arriving too late for the moment of demand? Excellent question. And I'll just say, Jeff, from the article, which was written by the one and only Emma Cosgrove with Supply Chain Dive, the CEO of Peloton is extremely optimistic and confident that demand will continue to persist and increase. So I thought that was it,
wouldn't we? Yeah. But I think that's a legitimate question to ask that, because it could be, and hopefully with the efficiency of their merchandising organization, if they're equally as efficient as their supply chain organization, they should have eyes on that. But that's so hard to predict. You know, one of the things that is the most difficult to predict right now is what consumers are going to do, or frankly, what they're going to be allowed to do going forward. So,
yep.
Yeah.
Well put. Chris Barnes.
Consider the CEO's optimism with the usual grain of salt, maybe
that's right.
Extra grain.
The CEO is not going to say, and I don't have his or her name in front of me. Nope, the band's going to fall off the table in 6 months.
Right.
But great question there, Jeff. We'll learn more together. Hey, Chris Barnes calls out the Reverse Logistics Association, which is a great friend of the show and a great clearinghouse for reverse logistics best practices and networking. So good stuff there.
Peloton should send those bikes to the Reverse Logistics Association conference in Vegas, which I think is still planned for February. I think they're still trying to do it. Whatever, wouldn't that be great? Everybody working out together.
An added bonus for the show, undoubtedly.
Show reverse logistics in action.
Right. Hey, let's also talk about folks paying their bills early. I don't know about you, Greg, but isn't it nice to be paid early, especially in a year like 2020? So who pays their bills early? Well, I'll tell you, big manufacturers do. That's who. So as Wall Street Journal reports, in an effort to protect their complex global supply chains, companies like Lockheed Martin, Micron Technology, Inc., and others are getting money quicker into their suppliers' hands. So, Professor A, this is for you. So, a company in Wichita, Kansas was mentioned in the article. Perfecta Incorporated is an aerospace company that benefited from Lockheed beginning to pay its invoices early in June of this year, so a few months back. At that time, Perfecta, unfortunately, had already had to lay off 15% of its workforce that totaled about 200 folks. But with the earlier than expected cash, Greg, Perfecta was able to avoid cutting more jobs, and they were able to keep part production up and running. And of course, that's what Lockheed is after, right? Another neat example that I really liked here, point out in the story, and Amanda, we should get Ramsey Midkiff with the waste management folks. This was a neat story. So last March, Waste Management began reaching out to its small and mid-sized customers to offer to pause fees and reduce prices. How cool is that? Especially to the hard-hit restaurant, hotel, and education sectors. In some instances, the company even offered a free month of service. The company's revenue took a hit, of course, but Waste Management CEO Jim Fish, Greg, was quoted as saying, quote, "We're not overly concerned about the cost. This pays itself back over time," end quote. So, we all need more good news, and especially in a year like 2020. And while there are some examples of folks going the opposite way, JetBlue was mentioned in the article, Greg, where it was wanting extended time frames for its bills. But regardless, good on Lockheed and Waste Management for helping their supply chains out and their customers out, right?
Well, we talked about this early in this seismic societal disruption. It's too late to make friends now, but this sure goes a long way, doesn't it? And you can bet that people know which side their bread is buttered on, and in helping out customers and supply chain partners, or any suppliers, really is it's critical. And I think companies have recognized just how critical some companies are to their success and maybe even survival, and they're doing this. I'm sure it's not completely altruistic. There's probably a sense of of self-preservation here, but hey, that's okay as long as it keeps things going. And it's great to hear, because small businesses are getting crushed right now. I'm recently, in just the last few weeks, aware of how much favor large businesses are getting from government and how much disfavor or neglect small businesses are getting from government, right? And we're going into 6+ months of this thing. It's the 14th, so it's been 6+ months of this thing. So that's a long time to survive, and I'm glad that the business partners are helping each other out.
Yeah, well put, Greg. Stefan says, hey, for us, it's the other way around. Customer just chose to extend their payment terms up to 120 days. There's hardly any consideration. Some even add extra steps to have a reason to pay late.
Get used to that, Stefan. Frankly, that's life with a lot of businesses. It's funny, Scott, because you were asking who pays their bills early. I can't tell you which book this was that I read, but the Billy Graham organization always paid their bills early. And whenever they had need from their vendors were first up to help them out. So
love that.
There is I mean, there's no reason not to, frankly. It's either 10 days early or it's on time or it's 10 days late. But once you've established the pattern, it's easy to maintain, right?
Well, Sophia adds to that. She says, Stephan, I don't want to tell you how far airlines have pushed their payments to airports. I can only imagine that there. So, and of course, JetBlue is mentioned in the article as doing just that. So y'all check another great article, Wall Street Journal, covering supply chain, logistics, manufacturing, you name it. So good stuff there.
Well, we just heard from the CEO of Southwest Airlines, who expects it to take a decade or more for airline transportation to get back to where it was. Everyone else is singing a different tune, but Southwest, clearly the best run airline in the States, is taking a much more realistic, probably more accurate stance. Hopefully, I do hope he's wrong.
Yeah.
Right.
I do too. All right. So moving right along. One last comment from the audience here. So Chris Barnes said, hey, companies should listen to some of the advice on the podcast with Rod Shurkin with Pro Purchaser. Now is a good time to build stronger relationships. Good stuff there, Chris. And, there's a variety of ways of building those strong relationships. Of course, your suppliers will appreciate being paid earlier. But, communication, how you treat your suppliers, how you negotiate. There's so many different elements to creating stronger relationships in tough years like this year.
Well, yeah. And Tyson Steffens and the Pallet Alliance, right? And their partnership, that's a great episode too. That is a 20-year partnership that has sustained multiple recessions.
That's right.
Outlived multiple recessions, right?
And continue to bring to the bottom line. So that's a good point. Okay. So moving right along, headline number 3, National Freight Strategic Plan has been introduced. Finally, Congress called for this type of plan back in 2012. So 8 years later, the U.S. Department of Transportation has finally delivered one. So, Greg, this plan looks at a variety of things, especially in the era of e-commerce, which is one of the factors driving heightened freight volumes these days, of course. The plan establishes goals in a variety of areas, such as safety, infrastructure, which we need to pay a lot of attention to infrastructure, and innovation. It identified a number of key issues that must be addressed, including, and I had to cherry pick a few of these here, truck safety and parking, congestion, data and information barriers, and condition of highways, bridges, and inland waterways, just to name a few. And, there's inland ports, as we've seen in Georgia and in South Carolina, really helping get traffic further inland so it can hit those 1 day and 2 day e-commerce delivery promises.
Yeah.
So,
and away from the ports where the physical restrictions on land for those trailers and trucks are significant, right?
Yep.
Let them handle that where there's more flat ground.
Yep. Good point there. So we'll see how much traction really, it took a while to get here. The Obama administration had kicked off the need and really nudged the DOT to get things going. And 8 years later, hey, better late than never. But we'll see just how much traction and how much changes as they start acting on the plan that they've laid out. All right. So also speaking of freight, Greg, this week is National Truck Driver Appreciation Week, and they need more than a week.
Ramos is on here, so if you want to thank a trucker, he's probably right here in the show right now.
That's right. Josue, I saw you earlier in the comments, so appreciate what you and your team does, and all of our drivers. They certainly deserve more than a week, but hey, if we can at least really get focused and show our gratitude at least 1 week out of the year, now's the time to do it. So if you want to learn more about this week and some of the events going on, the festivities, other than, hey, hug a driver, be nice, put yourself in their shoes, those kind of simple gestures, which are, go a long way. You can go to the American Trucking Associations and learn a lot more about some of the things that will take place this week. So, Greg, before we bring on our featured guest, I want to give you, we've been talking a lot about drivers here lately. One quick comment from you before we bring on JD.
Well, I think this National Freight Strategic Plan, strategic freight plan, whatever it is. Addressing safety and parking is critical, right? I mean, there's a lot to think about when it comes to that, but driving around for your last hour of available service to try and find a spot to park it's a burden. It's a burden on cities. It's a burden on truckers. It's a burden on infrastructure and facilities. And there has to be a solution, right? Yep. That to me has got to be one of the top issues. Of course, there are other safety issues as well, but where these folks can lay up for the night is important. And it tells you how much trucking has grown in terms of vehicles on the street, that we're out of space to do that.
And I'm going to tell you, one of the things I've enjoyed in recent weeks, I'm a big YouTube fan. I like digging in and finding obscure videos and really kind of filling in some of my blind spots I have in perspective. There's a ton of truck drivers that document their journeys and all the ins and outs, and it's fascinating. So you can Google trucking on YouTube and really get educated on a lot of their experiences. It was always at least my blind spot. So God bless our truckers and truck drivers. Greg.
Amen. And if you wanna get eyes on some truckers having fun with their vehicles, there's a fella on Instagram named Harold Epperson, who is a retired driver, and he is constantly highlighting people who have done cool things with their rigs. I mean, some of these rigs look so cool. They look like they ought to be in a museum, not on a roadway. But I mean, they are amazing, and they're having fun with it. They're good, and they are some of those truckers that are documenting their drives. So,
well put, as always,
yeah.
Greg. All right, so as we wrap up the news section, appreciate all the comments. No, we couldn't get to everybody. A lot of good stuff. A lot of comments and discussion. A lot of conversations going on that I'm keeping an eye on. Hey, we've got a great guest here today. This conversation has been in the works for a while. I want to welcome in JD Redmon, founder and CCO at Acces Expd. Good afternoon, JD. How you doing? Uh-oh, I think we've got you on mute. Here, let's see if we can fix that. Oh. Murphy's Law is alive and well.
There we go.
There we go. How are you guys doing today?
Good.
Fantastic. Good, really man. Enjoyed chatting with you pre-show here. And looking forward to what you're going to share with our audience as we dive into visibility and some of the neat things out there. But before we do that, JD, Greg and I would love for you to share more about who you are with our audience.
Sure.
In case there's anyone who doesn't know already.
All three people.
Yeah.
Oh man. So hey guys, I'm JD. I've been in transportation now going on 3.5 years. Came from the retail sector as an executive over at Rent-A-Center, which was an Acceptance Now subsidiary. Have extensive background in building companies strategically. And with Acces, that's what we do, not only in the transportation industry, but any industry. We go in and we solve the problem to take companies from one inflection point to the next. And that's by utilizing something that we call the blickety process, black activity process. How can we keep companies in the black, and what activities surrounding that allows them to be successful? So in the past 3 years with Acces, we've helped companies grow and develop 1.6 billion plus in revenues due to the different strategies that we've implemented. So did that at TTN with maintenance, which was a SaaS solution there, and bringing that visibility and transparency in that niche. But now we want to discuss what does that look like on the macro level for everyone, and then bringing it back down to the micro, which would give people an experience down to their actual carrier or asset-based or whatever their ecosystem may look like.
All right. So have you trademarked blickety? Because I got a feeling you got a lot of folks that will love that term.
So blickety is in the works of being trademarked. My fiance is actually a trademark lawyer, so working back and forth with her and working with some of my other friends just to make sure this is what we want to go forward with. But blickety is a kind of a catchy name that people seem to gravitate towards, and it means something great: keeping your company profitable.
That's
Yeah.
right. Well, hey, one more quick comment before we dive into visibility. So, to anyone that really likes the term and thinks they might, put it in a headlock and take it somewhere, JD is married to a trademark attorney. That's
Yes.
an operative word there. So leave it
Yes.
alone.
Yes,
Good
Let
stuff
it
there.
go, people.
let it go. Let it
Let
go.
it go. All right. So JD, as we were kind of putting our homework together for today's conversation, visibility came to the forefront as something you've been really tracking more than a lot of other things. All the things are going on across global supply chain. So let's dive into that. Give us some initial thoughts here when it comes to visibility.
So visibility and transparency, sometimes people believe that they're synonymous, but I want to make a clear distinction today so that we can talk about it. The overall goal of the conversation is to show you the headache that everyone wants to solve, which is the macro level of visibility and transparency in supply chain, but then bringing it down to the micro, which is to your specific carrier, your company, and how does it change your life. So visibility provides a company with the knowledge of what's happening with different activities in their company, while transparency allows you to take that knowledge and make it available to your customers, your partners, and your stakeholders. So everyone, Greg, Scott, you hear it. I need visibility. I need visibility. I need to see everything that's happening with my asset, with my carrier, with my broker, with my supply. I want to see it. And everyone says they have it. By everyone, I mean various companies. But now, instead of thinking that there's one company that needs to come out with this great subject or this great solution, let's figure out how do we collaborate with the solutions that are already in the industry that will provide the same amount of eagle-eye visibility and transparency if you piece the puzzle together. So that's what we want to talk about, Scott.
Outstanding. So Greg, where does your mind go immediately as JD kind of tees this up?
Well, immediately it goes to, I love the concept because so many companies are trying to start with a niche that they know really, really well and expand into an area that they don't know at all or don't know nearly as well. And as an investor and as a founder, you have to know the space that you're attacking intimately. And when you get in trouble is when you start building those concentric circles outside of your knowledge and core gift area. And that's when the dilution occurs in the effectiveness of your solution. So being able to wire these applications together is critical. It's done in so many other industries, right?
Yes.
I mean, if you think about it, even Salesforce, if you look at the ecosystem that they've built around their product, or QuickBooks, there are hundreds, thousands of applications that do tiny little things that enough people need to make a living off of.
Well, little known fact, when we first set out with Supply Chain Now, it was to build rocket ships like Elon Musk, but I quickly found out that was not within my concentric circle, Greg.
Also, the name didn't look very good on a rocket ship, right?
Oh boy, math is not my strong suit.
There is probably going to be a market for intergalactic supply chain transport.
Absolutely.
Yes.
All right, so JD,
2060.
Yeah.
All right, so JD, you've identified some really neat examples that are offering visibility in different ways, shapes, and forms. So let's dive into that a little bit.
So we all know in the supply chain, when someone says what Greg was saying there, stay in your niche and let's not overexpand. That's not saying that you can't do it. He's not demeaning your prowess. He's not saying that you don't understand the market. He's saying do what's great for you. Some people have a niche that they just understand and they get it. For me, that's connectivity. For me, that's thinking strategically. So I stay in that area. When we talk about supply chain, there are three major players when it comes to transportation: the actual shipper, supplier, the broker, and the carrier. Shipper, broker, and carrier all need visibility. Shipper, broker, carrier all need transparency. But a shipper's visibility is a little bit different than broker and carrier. And I'm giving this preface before we walk into the three companies. So the shipper wants to see, where is my container? Has my container made it to its last end destination? The shipper is not concerned about what took place with the breakdown. The shipper is not concerned about why that asset stopped moving. The shipper is only concerned with why isn't my container dropped? Why isn't it loaded yet? The broker is concerned with visibility from, okay, I gave this conversation to the carrier. Here's the carrier that I've assigned this load to, and I need to make sure that they are en route. I don't want to just track it and you tell me that it's in Louisiana in Shreveport. Why did it stop in Louisiana at Shreveport at mile marker 61 and has been sitting there for an hour and a half? I need to know that. And the carrier is then responsible for transparency. Hey, Mr. Broker, I broke down because of X. Not, oh, the load is going to be there and on time, don't worry about it. Everyone wants to communicate and everyone wants to see it. Now, the argument that we've had, Scott, going through the past decades is everyone saying, we need this transportation. I need transparency. I need to see it. I need visibility. Talk to me. But people view transparency or communication with opening their vest. And they feel naked because they're saying, man, I got to hide this from you, because if I don't hide this from you, you may not contract me as a carrier. If I don't hide this from you, shipper, you may not contract me or renew our contract as a broker. And the shipper is saying, I have to hide the fact that this load hasn't made it yet to my actual consigner, because I don't want them to think I can't move their product effectively. Everyone's in the business of hiding. Now we need to start talking. And that's where these companies come in.
So JD, real quick, because I think you shared a lot already, but folks aren't comfortable. So many folks aren't comfortable with really opening the kimono and really kind of being out, putting yourself out there. And the interesting dynamic, though, is if you haven't been comfortable over the last, 5 years or so, as we've shared more, you're really not going to be comfortable over the next 5 or 10 years, where we really become more visible and more transparent, because that's what the people want, right?
Yes. Well, it's what the people want, but I also think that when we step into the business mind, guys, we got to stop thinking that as soon as Scott Luton and Greg White become supply chain now, that all of a sudden, we don't have just normal basic human needs. If you've been in a relationship of any kind, your relationship gets better by what? By communicating, by talking. When you're frustrated and you bring it up to your best friend, you say, hey man, when you said that really hurt me. That bothered me. And your best friend says, man, I didn't know that it bothered you that way. I won't do that again. You had to be vulnerable in order for you to get to the next level of trust in that relationship. And so now what we're looking for is, how can we increase the trust factor throughout the entire supply chain? So you have a platform right now with Turbo, where Turbo connects shipper, broker, and carrier. They connect them in a communication platform. What you got, Scott?
Oh, no, I was just going to, for everyone, TURVO, right? Turbo is the company you're referring to. So why is that important?
So Turbo is important because they have the overall architect, right? Their structure of the platform is meant for communication. Think of Slack mixed with Asana, mixed with a BI tool. It's all together and they had a baby, right? Now, Turbo is the shipper, and Nike can see that their consignment is on the way with JB Hunt, and the JB Hunt driver is now in Tennessee in Knoxville, and he has a stop. Well, instead of it just being a stop and you don't know why as the shipper or as the broker, inside of their portal, they communicate. And the driver has an app where he says, hey, I just had a blowout of my tire. Boom, I'm not late. It's not me lying to you. There's no more the shipper feels lied to because they think all brokers are lying. There's no more the broker thinks the carrier is lying. Here's valid proof with a picture, with communication, that this driver is broken down. Here's why we've slowed down. Okay. Yep. Now, in these platforms, it's all about communication. But with the communication of Turbo, you can see the visibility of it, but people are not able to understand the transparency of that visibility, because the Turbo is a supply chain solution. It is not a trucking and transportation solution. That's the difference. And that's where you have to then begin to piece the puzzle together of bringing in a K ratio and bringing in a FreightWaves sonar, the data to interpret and put that in to say, you know what, my driver's broken down because of an air hose leak. Well, when I'm dealing with a K ratio with their freight intelligence platform is now going to tell the broker, this lane is still profitable. You just had a breakdown. But when you do have this breakdown, on average, it costs you X amount of money.
Yep. Okay? And time, right?
And time.
Yeah.
So real quick.
Go ahead, Scott.
Real quick. You're getting a lot of buzz in the comments about a couple things, but including, as Jamin says, vulnerability is often the missing ingredient. And Sophia was going to quote you where you said, JD, vulnerability is needed in order to achieve trust. And she said she's quoting on you on that. And then one final comment from David. The top advice always given is about communication. Transparency is a must. People need to learn to get comfortable and communicate. All right. So, Greg, you were going to make a comment.
Well, now I'm thinking of something else as well, and that is that, look, transparency exists already. It's not being utilized by some players in the industry, but now there are no boundaries to industry. If this industry, I mean, we had this conversation last week with Josue, and what I've recognized over the last few months in getting more in-depth knowledge about transportation is that if this industry doesn't fix itself, somebody else is going to fix it. It's not that you're going to be able to continue to play the shell game and shuck and jive your way through, through the mishaps of transportation. You're going to come clean, and it's either you're going to come clean on your terms or you're going to come clean on somebody else's terms. So the industry really needs to listen to what you're saying, JD, because it's better if we have people who know the industry with skills and they combine with people with technology and data skills to solve this problem. Because as you said, look, the ultimate determinant is that this is what shippers want. And this is what the various parties want. And those various parties will get it one way or the other. They will get it they will make it themselves. They'll find an accumulation of solutions. They'll get a solution from outside the industry to help them. But I mean, the days of being able to hide a truck in the bushes, right, and sell cigarettes off the back of it, those are going to be gone very soon.
And that's the thing where, I see Tim's comment, and I saw Tim, he commented on a post where I was talking with millennials with trucking, and we brought in a different age perspective of it, because what I believe is a lot of the holdup in innovation and collaboration in the industry has been some of the longer tenured executives who are unwilling to learn something different about how to produce a better result for trucking. Now, when he brings up the age factor, I am in 100% agreement with that, Tim. I do believe we still need the 35 and 40 plus year vets. But what I'm saying is that the evolution of their role has changed. Instead of being in an action role like a CCO or a CSO, they should be in an advisory role like a board advisor, a chairman of the board, someone who is sitting there saying, I may not understand how the API and the web triggers work, but what I do know is trucking. I do know is CPM.
That goes back to the whole vulnerability, admitting regardless if you're a senior leader, if you're a junior leader, if you're at some point in between, knowing what you don't know, going back to concentric circles that Greg was referring to. But, JD, what you're describing, the challenge within the trucking industry, that spills out across a variety of the challenges we have in the business and society, right? So, all right, so let's keep driving. No pun intended. I know there's a bunch of stuff we're going to try to get to here today.
Yeah, so when you have Turbo, which is the overall umbrella, the archetype, the actual platform that I would use as the shell. So then you go into K-Ratio, where K-Ratio allows you to lay against multiple TMS data that's interpreted, and you can make that for a macro level conversation where you can say, hey, this is what's happening with OTRI around me. Here's how that's affecting me and my ecosystem, and drive it down to the micro level. Now, as a broker, here's what I wanted to explain. As a broker has to have trust in that carrier that they're going to do everything they need to get that load there and dropped. But if he is not able to trust the fact that you can say I had a breakdown, or I have an insubordinate driver, or I need to have a power swap, or I need to have a trailer swap or a cargo load shift, if he can't trust you just to have minimal communication, why would they re-up on that contract again? Think about that. So with K-Ratio, and when you start tying in Sonar, I'm asking people to say, here's your eagle eye view of what's taking place. Containers picked up, Turbo picks up on that. If there's a breakdown and we need to figure out what's the calculated cost of that by monies, how much does this breakdown cost me? How much does an air hose or a brake seal leak on this lane cost? Why does this lane have so many breakdowns? Is it the actual route? Do I need to reroute my trucks to avoid these types of instances? It gives you the data to make sense. But unfortunately, a lot of companies, they go look at data, and then they try to figure out what it means instead of using the data to tell them where to move towards. And that's where the new innovation is coming in. Investors are saying, I see your P&L. I see what the data is saying, that there's a constraint on contention right now, or capacity for trucks. I see that. But how are you going to move going forward? These three companies, along with Rose Rocket, who is a web triggering company that kind of connects different various TMSs, whatever software you have together with K-Ratio's freight intelligence inside the platform of Turbo. And now let's start bringing in Sonar, FreightWave Sonar, which is going to see what the spot market is doing, whether that's port to port, whether that's lane to lane. Now you have that visibility. But Scott, Greg, what I'm saying is, we can't sit here and wait for one company to come out with this grandioso product that we need. We have to say, guys, I need Craig Fuller, I need Cal Lintner, and I need Sam over at Turbo. I need you guys to have a conversation. And I need you all to now make it available and easy for customers like yourself and your audience to a la carte choose how they want to see their ecosystem, whether it's from the macro level or the micro level. And that's when we begin to allow transparency to bleed in. And there is no more, I don't trust this company, I don't trust you. It's, I see what's happening, I understand trucks breakdown. Have you ever noticed, and I'm gonna be real quiet for my pause, because I know people are probably in the comments going crazy. Have you ever noticed as an adult that you appreciate the truth, even if it hurts? You'd rather somebody tell you the truth instead of lie to you. I'd rather you say, JD, I can't get that load there. I know it's supposed to be there at 12 o'clock today. It's not going to be there till 4 o'clock. Here's why. Don't charge it to my head, to my heart, charge it to my head. We had some instances take place. I can't promise it will never not happen again, but I can promise I will communicate better when it happens in the beginning.
All right. So JD, you're absolutely right. The comments are blowing up, and I'm going to share a couple of these, and then I'm going to circle back to get Greg's follow-up commentary. So Keith Duckworth is making your point, or also agrees with your point. Basically, bad news doesn't better with age. It's not like wine or cheese, right?
That's right.
Pierre says, beyond communicating the bad news, the organization must be able to quickly respond to the action or with the action to be taken to resolve. Good stuff there. Looks like Jamin added an addition to his adapt and thrive model, or die. Adapt and thrive, or die is what David added to Jamin's motto. Let's see. David says, Jeff, employees that were they're basically talking about the communication, David, is between the drivers and the employees in the warehouse, receiving dock, you name it, how there can be a lack of communication amongst those 100%. Different parties. Yep.
Well, David's right about that. Dave Abel said that when he went out on the drive with Wayne Craig, and he said, I can't believe the lack of communication that I'm receiving, and I'm the CEO of the company.
So here's one final comment. There's so many more, but I'm picking this one here. And I don't have visibility, speaking of visibility, as to which LinkedIn user said this. So Clay and Amanda, if y'all could share that, because we've been talking about cloud. In fact, cloud spending is up 30% second quarter 2020 over a year ago. So if companies are doubling down, or if they haven't been investing, they're trying to catch up quickly. This user says, I'm not comfortable with cloud computing solutions or SaaS when the terms of service can change any time, very much like social media. That's probably a very valid concern, right, JD?
It is a valid concern. And what I would tell that LinkedIn user is that the issue is not the cloud or the SaaS. SaaS is software as a service for the people that may not know. That's not the issue. The issue that this LinkedIn user is having is there was no communication. So let me read what they meant to say. I am not comfortable with cloud computing solutions or SaaS when the terms are not communicated to me effectively before they're changed, just like with social media. That's what they're meaning to say. So it's SaaS solutions are going to change. Amazon's changing every day. Microsoft's changing every day. But you get that little email where it says user terms are updated, and all you do is click yes, and you never read through it. That's the communication that you're supposed to be reading through to see what the updates were.
Yeah, those are contract terms, and you don't have to agree to them. You could always move to another vendor or on-site. But the truth is, cloud and SaaS are here to stay, and soon there won't be on-premise
Hey, really
technology.
quick, William Davis was that LinkedIn user that shared that very valid concern.
Thanks,
And
Will.
and JD, I love your call out there, because all these days, every time I log on to my bank, it seems like your terms and conditions have been updated. Okay,
Yep.
Greg, a lot there, but what are a couple of key items in your ears?
Well, back to that just previous point, the problem is not with the technology. The problem is with the vendor.
Mhm.
You have a lack of communication with that supplier of that technology. I would suggest you find a different supplier of that technology, because it's not inherent that the terms change without notice.
Yes.
So, there are good and bad cloud providers, just like there are good and bad on-premise providers. I want to address one point, and that's the selling of cigarettes off the back of a truck. Yes, I have seen Goodfellas, but you all have to remember,
It's a good
I've lived
movie.
in Kansas City, Missouri, and Kansas, and
Whew.
Springfield, Missouri, so I know old school trucking. So I've actually
Yeah.
seen cigarettes being sold off the back of a truck. I know how that works.
Oh yeah.
Worked, as David said earlier, that you can't get away with that anymore. But extreme example to identify a common case, right? So, and the other is, I think we need to consciously, first, as regards generational transformation, we need to consider two things. The leaders of the generation of leaders aren't necessarily the problem. It's the generation of frontline office and executional workers that we need to be concerned about, because they're the ones holding on to that knowledge, and they are leaving at a rate of 10,000 per day from the workforce.
And they're
We need
leaving that
to
way
capture
because
that
you don't have
knowledge,
people to do it.
and we need to impart that knowledge into technology, because that closes the gap between the change that the millennial and Gen Z generations and Gen X want to see in companies. It closes the gap between that knowledge that's leaving at a high rate, accelerating rate, and the technology that can process that and create better decisions based on that knowledge. And if you ever hear, this is the rule of thumb I've used for 20 years. If you ever hear somebody say, "How do you know that's the case?" and their answer is, "I just know," that's somebody whose knowledge you need to capture, and then give them the opportunity to seek career advancement elsewhere.
Yeah.
So there are lots of things that we need to consider throughout this transformation, not the least of which, JD, is those companies you've mentioned. If they're not listening to you, let me assure you, there are 3 or 4 or 5 or 10 others out there ready to do exactly what you're talking about. And you are either a disruptor or you are the disrupted in this environment. And it is
You
happening.
want to have that. You want to have the disruption, but I also want to be very clear to the audience out there that there is no ageism in my heart. What I'm trying to stop and provide a solution to are these tech companies that come in that are backed by Silicon Valley money that do not know transportation at all. All they know is their tech.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I love that you know your tech, but I would implore you to Tim's point, Tim, that popped up in the comments, I would implore you to go out and hire a transportation executive, someone who has that experience, and they might not understand your technology, but they can guide you around the obstacles of foolishness with you making mistakes. Because I'm telling you now, transportation professionals are annoyed by technology companies coming into the industry. I got new tech. I'm going to change your world. And Shipper is my client. Shipper is everybody's client. That's everybody. Everybody serves the shipper. Shipper is the god of transportation. We all get that. I know shippers that have phone numbers that go to voicemails, and they're only given to people that are brokers and carriers, so you don't call them all day. That's what they're trying to avoid. Now, if we can provide this eagle eye view, you guys go out there and employ this conversation. This is a thought-provoking conversation to say, stop waiting for this big solution to come and start demanding collaboration for some of these big boys, some of the JBs, some of the K ratios, the turbos, and say, guys, sit in the room, play together in the sandbox. Yeah, you're going to get sand in your diaper and you might get sand in your sock, but guess what? After you wash off and shake off a bit, we have a new transportation industry. It's what we're all seeking, guys.
Awesome. All right. I hate to wind this thing down, because between your energy and the perspective and expertise you bring to the table and the comments, clearly there's a ton of passion, expertise there. I mean, this is why we do what we do. But give us one thing to close on, and then I want to talk, if it's okay, let's open up some eyes with what's going on down on the coast.
Sure.
Really important stuff too. So what's one thing to challenge our audience with, or one thing we want to close on here today?
I want to challenge you right now, no matter what position you're in, whether that's a C-suite on down to an entry-level position in transportation. I want you to get outside of your niche. You know your niche. Now go learn and have an empathy towards the niches that you work with and are connected with, so you better understand the supply chain and how we're all interlocked together. The more people that educate themselves about the complete interlocking of the supply chain, the less amount of emotional conversations we'll have, and we'll increase the logical conversations about how do we push forward innovation.
Love it. Greg, that's quite a challenge, because we all get stuck. It's human, with our blinders on and our neck of the woods and our roles, or our silos. And, we've got to consciously and deliberately, like JD said, take those things off, break them off, and then get out and understand your blind spots, right?
It takes an intentional effort. So I worked with a company called Henry Schein, and they had what they called a passport, where you went around and met with colleagues from different departments, both in and out of supply chain, that were impacted by supply chain. And you had to get sign off and take a test that you understood the dynamics of their business.
Wow.
And you proved your knowledge and empathy of that. So
love it.
That kind of intentionality is what's really required to make that happen.
Passport. I like that concept. Sounds like it worked well. Yeah. So Jamin and a few others really liked your quote there. You may get sand in your diaper and get sand in your sock. So good stuff there, JD. And Chris says that might be our next T-shirt ism. So, and I promise you, if we do anything, we'll get JD as royalties, because I don't want to get in trouble. All right. So let's, as we wrap here with JD Redmon, JD, I want to make sure just the next few moments, it doesn't do it justice, but as we wrap with you, what's going on the heels of the storms we've had down the Gulf Coast, as we talked about in the pre-show. Man, it hits the radar on the news cycle, and then it flips off for election stuff or whatever else fills that gap. And a lot of folks are suffering down there, and that's probably in the blind spot of many Americans and global citizens. So give us an update on what you see with your family and friends down there.
So my family and friends, I'm from Central Louisiana. I have family all throughout Louisiana. The biggest thing I will say, Scott, is that most people don't realize, like I said pre-show, when a hurricane hits Louisiana, it hits the entire state. When it hits Port Allen or it hits Houston, you don't see people in Dallas or Amarillo complaining. But in Louisiana, it's a small state. So if it hits, whether that's Cameron like it did with Laura, or it's Katrina would hit New Orleans, the tropical storm or the Category 2 will go all the way up into northern Louisiana. I will tell you that Hurricane Laura has done more damage psychologically to the state and implorably to the state than Katrina did. It is not receiving as much conversation right now because we're not talking about 40 feet of water floating up or 8 feet of water here and there. But you can't imagine someone going to their home in Lake Charles like a family member of mine did, and his house was gone. All was there was a foundation. Think about this, guys, 170-mile-an-hour plus winds blowing. My uncle had horses where he brought them up to Natchitoches, and some of them are safe. The ones that were left down there that they didn't have the trailer space for, horses were literally being blown away. Trees were being blown into houses from miles off of riverbanks because the wind was that strong. So as of right now, Lake Charles is still without lights. They're still without food. They're still without water. Natchitoches, Louisiana, where I grew up in, majorly, they are just now starting to get lights back on. Now, mind you guys, Natchitoches is only an hour and a half south of Shreveport, Louisiana. Most people know where Shreveport is. So it is in central Louisiana. It wasn't surrounded by water, but it did get hit by the Category 2 storm of Laura as it traveled through. So whatever you may pray to, whoever your deity may be, if it's good vibes, if it's frequencies, if it's the universe, I don't care what you serve or how you serve it. Just send whatever those vibes are, whatever the energy you call it, however you name it, send that to Louisiana. It's not being talked about, but we have people sleeping in Walmart parking lots, people sleeping in school buses, children are going without food. And what do you do during a large pandemic when jobs were already scarce, when people were being fired from jobs who've had jobs for 20 plus years, and now that job has been blown away? Their home has been blown away. Now they have no source of income. Now they have no source of a place to live and to be safe. How does that feel? Now, that sucks. But now what we have to talk about is how does that affect the transportation industry? And we don't have the time to go into that. But I want you to know now that there are some lanes that have increased exponentially, which is derogatory. I don't care how tight capacity gets during the middle of an issue or natural occurrence. I should not see lanes that are usually a $2.20, $2.15 go up to $7, $8, $9, and $10. I should not see that a mile. You're taking advantage of people during a destructive time. Typically, you have some pushback from the government when they see that people are gouging that way. But you should not ever treat people in a crisis that way.
So much there. It needs so much more attention. Thanks so much for bringing, kind of opening at least my eyes here today, JD. Hey, real quick, Antonio Raul Rivera in the comments mentioned Allen Aid. I know JD and Greg, we're all familiar with Allen Aid, the good work they're doing. Amanda, if you or Clay could drop into Allen Aid, it's a nonprofit that helps basically marshal corporate supply chain and resources to serving, getting supplies into where they should be in the right hands, because that's what supply chain leaders do, right? So if we could drop their URL, there we go. Thank you, Clay. I appreciate that. If y'all are anywhere in the audience interested in helping out, I'm sure they're involved in helping the people down there. Y'all give that a click. JD, we're going to have you back. I really appreciate all that you shared here today. There's a lot more to your story, and we'll have to dive into a lot of that rest of the stuff on your next stop in with us. Greg,
thank you.
Before we bid adieu to JD, what's one of the big things on your mind based on what he shared?
The biggest thing for me is this continues my learning about the intricacies of transportation. I think everyone who listens to us much knows that when I was in industry, before I was in supply chain solutions, I was a shipper and I just cut the PO and we had a dark room full of people who handled everything that everybody is talking about.
Yeah.
And I had no visibility to it, and I didn't want any visibility to it. I just wanted my stuff there on time.
Yeah.
So the evolution of this since those times, which admittedly was over 2 decades ago, the evolution of this is encouraging, and yet the intricacies of it and the pushback against this progress is concerning. And it makes me recognize that some aspect of this solution will come from outside the transportation industry, because we continue to object to real change here. And as long as we do, it's going to take some outside influence to assure that it happens. Agreed. As JD said, you always have to have the knowledge of the people whose problem you're trying to solve in the technology. Don't try to solve it with your MBA. Try to solve it with your MBA, your scientists, and someone with industry knowledge. You get there so much faster.
Yep. Well put. All right. So JD, real quick, how can folks connect with you after today?
Guys, I'm on LinkedIn. That's pretty much my largest platform there that I interact with daily. We're on Twitter as well at Redmon JD. Working on Instagram, still trying to figure out if I even want to have a personal platform there. But what I do want to leave the entire audience with is that when I came into this industry, I sat at the feet of an industry vet. His name is Jim Coffrin. I call him my sensei, 35+ year veteran, right? So when Tim brought up the fact that we still need them, you're dang right we do. Because every idea that I thought was imaginative and innovative, he was like, someone's already did it. It's going to fail if you go that route. Don't do that. But I'm glad you're thinking of it. He never shut me down, but he always guided me to where I needed to go. So I would not be who I am in transportation and know what I know if I hadn't sat at the feet and made myself a mentee. In my previous role, I was a VP. I don't care if you're a VP or a C-suite guy. You always need mentors, and you always have to have pristine people in your circle like a Scott or a Greg to ensure that you are being sharpened to be the best you possible.
That's such a great note to finish on. I know we had some questions around that we'll have to get to later. A couple questions around the competencies of breaking in the supply chain. I would encourage y'all to reach out to either Greg or JD or myself or our team. We try to help out as much as we can. So, but JD Redmon, you really, as expected, your truth gun was fully locked, cocked, and ready to rock. And really appreciate what you shared here today. Go check out Acces Expd But first, you got to make sure you're connected and following JD Redmon, especially on LinkedIn. So
Yep.
JD, thanks so much. Stay
Thank you.
safe. All the best to your family and your friends down there on the Gulf Coast, and we will talk with you real soon.
Awesome, man. Thank y'all again for having me.
JD.
Supply chain folks, keep joining them every week. This is where you learn, guys.
Awesome. Thanks so much, JD. Really appreciate it, man.
Bye-bye.
Oh, that's one of those conversations you really wish you were in long form format with 4 or 5 hours, and we bring in food and
Right.
maybe even an adult beverage or two, and really uncover and unpack some things. I mean, man, there were so many different aspects of what he shared that we could have dove in deeper on. Right?
Well, it's interesting. The more you uncover, the more you see both the problems and the opportunity. I mean, and I can't argue with the. You don't have to call it generational change. You can just call it mindset change. We can acknowledge that some people of any generation are going to be difficult to change their mindset, but it does need to happen. That mindset change needs to occur. Right?
Agreed.
That partnering spirit, the comfort with the value of your own organization, is what allows you to share more and be more transparent with your business partners. If you can't share, open the kimono a little bit, if you can't share what your business is about without the concern that someone's going to take it or dump you for it, then you're not that. What you have is not that special, or else your organization isn't that good.
Agreed. I want to go back to your call out though, because as either Amanda or someone that had mentioned it to me before, we all have a little bit of millennial in us, or Gen Z. I mean, let's get away from classifying. Yeah, there's some generalities, or there are some different exposures. I mean, yeah, sure, but there's so much in common across generations. And Greg, you put it right, because anyone can be hesitant to embrace any kind of change. I mean, it's human. Yep. So rather than pointing fingers, let's just get down to the nitty gritty and make things happen. So good stuff there.
As I often say, nothing is ever always anything.
I like that. That's T-shirtism for sure. Okay. Everybody, one of the main things we want to do at the end of each of these live streams especially is bring resources to y'all that we have vetted, that we're familiar with, and oftentimes they're no cost or at least low cost. So JD alone was an incredible resource. So I'm sure a lot of folks will be connecting and learning from him in the weeks and months ahead. But here's a couple others. And Greg, we're going to have to shoot through these Reader's Digest style here. So Flow 2020 is happening this week. I think there may be still room. I'm not sure. There's no charge to attend and hear from a litany of companies on the move. Top of the list, Six River Systems, and of course, Shopify.
Shopify, right.
But Greg, they've got, I was looking at their list over the weekend. They've got folks from Lockheed, folks from Office Depot, all the folks they're doing.
Mondelez, Google, ArcBest.
That's right. They're doing e-commerce, and you're going to learn from all about the future of logistics, operations, and warehousing at Flow 2020. You had a comment, Greg?
Just really important to understand, e-commerce is commerce, and everything that everything we've talked about today is triggered by that purchase by the consumer. So
they're the boss.
It's important to know every aspect of the supply chain.
Yep. So you got Flow 2020. That's this week. So sign up for that. The registration link's in the show notes, as is the registration link for Supply Chain USA Virtual 2020. You have a little more time for that one. That's October 7th and 8th. There is also a free taster pass to hear all 6 keynotes, Greg, including we love Sandra McQuillan around here. She's been on the show a couple of times. She is Chief Supply Chain Officer at Mondelez International, and she is a do not miss keynote. So is Martin and Peter and Jason, right?
Right. We're interviewing Peter Tuborg, the CEO of Arla Foods, which is a dairy co-op. So, I mean, there's a lot to understand about supply chain here, and of course, brought to you by the great folks at Reuters. So it's a quality event. Yep.
The link to sign up, including for that free taster pass, is in the show notes. New offering but an old friend of ours, current and continued friend of ours, is GreyOrange. Talk about things that are making e-commerce happen these days. So GreyOrange and Cindy Lago with Capgemini will be joining Greg and I on a webinar, free webinar, September 30th. New market, new mindset, new rules for retail, right, Greg?
If you want to hear from somebody who's going to bring truth bombs to about retail to this, Cindy Lago is the person. No holds barred. And Jeff Cashman has been fulfilling retail demand for decades at various companies, but now at GreyOrange. And if any of you saw our interview with him, stellar, right? I mean, these are people who know the industry as well as know supply chain and the technology that makes it happen.
Agreed. And Chris Barnes, I see you. Pink is my color, evidently, Greg. Chris Barnes has shared. So, hey, whatever works, right? But hey, y'all check out this webinar, New Market, New Mindset, with our friends from GreyOrange and Capgemini, and the link to sign up is in the show notes. And finally, we continue our Stand Up and Sound Off series of programming. This is really meant to our audience. This is not going to be 200 slides, PowerPoint, death by PowerPoint.
Right.
This is all about a very interactive, real, and frank conversation, and we're going to hear from not only our audience, Greg, who always brings it. Today's live streams are a great example of that, but also we're going to hear from 3 equity advocates that are making it happen within their large organizations. So led by Elba Prehod Gallagher, founder and president of ShowMe50.org, still, Greg, the all-time appearance record holder here at Supply Chain Now, right?
Yeah. And making it happen at, making that kind of change happen at UPS too. So
that's right. All right. So folks, you can find easy links to our guest, JD Redmon, here today earlier, these events, you name it, some other resources, all in the show notes. Try to make it really easy as best we can. All right. So Greg, before we sign off today and connect with Sophia, which we're looking forward to here later today, momentarily, really. One final thought for you before I sign off.
Well, I think it's important to recognize that what JD was talking about is a fact, and that is that it is better for the companies, the ones he mentioned or other ones who have specialties, to know their superpower and to stay with that superpower and to partner with super friends who can help them bring a better solution to the marketplace. And the truth is, as I said before, it's going to happen. It's either going to happen with those companies or other companies or those companies in combination with other companies. But change is coming to this industry slowly but surely, and particularly this segment. Resistance is futile is my last statement there.
I like the British version of that, futile.
Yes, I meant to say futile.
All right. So to our audience, thanks so much. I've got to go back here and check all these great comments. JD clearly provoked a lot of thoughts and passion and sentiment from the audience. So great guest here today, JD Redmon. Make sure y'all connect with him on LinkedIn. Final challenge, which really echoes some of what Greg shared, some of what JD shared. Hey, do good, give forward, be the change that's needed. Do something. Get out of your silo. Rip off the blinders. Use a passport like Greg shared, but regardless, take action, deeds, not words. And on that note, hey, check us out, supplychainradio.com. Check out our podcast. You like our live streams. And on that note, we'll see you next time here